Hey everybody, welcome back to Stock Talk. Appreciate all the symbols that have been coming through. I've got a pretty good list for this show, and also wanted to mention that I think there's a more diverse type of pattern showing up because we're getting more symbols, and there's some attractive ones in there as well. So this should be make for an interesting show from that standpoint. I wanted to make sure you realize while I have provided stock research and consulting for the past 30 years, I did actually help design a few software packages as well over the years from a technical analysis standpoint. So I'm sort of interested in wanted to be able to show you guys some of the things that I like about the ACP program. So let's get into the agenda today. I want to talk about StockChartsACP. Now, I don't work for StockCharts, but I think, there's certain things about the program that I really find attractive. And I use 4 different software packages right now, and that I pay for 4 different ones. But I find myself every day spending more and more time on the ACP program. So I wanted to show you a few things that keeps drawing me to the program, and I think you might find of interest. So we're going to go through those, and then we want to leave plenty of time to go through the stocks. Before I get into that, my service is found on rabelstockresearch.com/services. And so the show is designed for me to help provide analysis on your stock picks. What my service does is I take my 30 years of experience and I provide the ideas. These are my stock picks. After going through thousands and thousands of charts, I try and narrow down the list for you to come up with some pretty good ideas. So the good news is for Stock Talk people, anyone who's watching, if you plug in Stock Talk into the coupon code under the individual package, you get the first 2 months for $50. So take a look at that. Let's get right into the ACP package. And I'd like to start out here and talk about, well, first of all, we have these chart lists, and you can have any chart list that you want in here right now. I've got the Stock Talk list in here, but you've got a number of different choices. That's nothing exciting. Most software packages do offer that. So what I want to do now is really kind of go through these tabs on the right. But actually, let me just start by saying, if you want to use my template so you don't have to create your own, let me just remind you, if you go into this sidebar here and click on the experts, my name is right here, Joe Rabil. So if you click on any one of the charts and you plug my name in there, the chart will come in. So that makes it pretty easy, so you don't have to go through and actually create it yourself. So that just want to make sure I point that out before we go on. So on the right side, I wanted to show, I'm going to start out, I'm going to skip a few things. I am going to come back to the scans, but I want to start out with this symbol summary. And I wanted to show this during the pre-market because this is a very accurate pre-market number. There's a few other programs out there that say they're providing pre-market at least prices, but I have not found them to be as accurate. So I find myself before the market opens going through and looking at any symbols that are important to me on this program because I think they're giving you a pretty accurate number. The other thing is we have this nice symbol summary. What I like to do is I collapse the fundamentals and I collapse the technicals. And now I have kind of everything that I'm looking for. I've got the Scooter ranking down here. It tells me it's a mid cap and where it's ranked. But if I want to go into the fundamentals or technicals, I can obviously go in there. But on a regular basis, the information that I'm looking for is right here. And that's, I want to see I've got the industry as well as the sector. And again, the pre-market data, I've got the market cap. This is very important to me. I like to know what the average volume is. Most cases, I like to see average volume, greater than 1 million. But that can depend. It can come down to 500,000, but that's a good number to have at your fingertips like that. The next earnings, and not only the date, but it tells you whether it's before the market open or after the market close. Very, very useful. And then the dividend yield is something that's important to me. I look at that for clients a lot. So just having all of this information at my fingertips, it's really everything that I look for. Again, I'm not a fundamental guy. I'm a technical guy. So I'm just looking, and this kind of provides me with a really quick summary. So if someone calls me, wants to ask about a stock, a lot of times I want to have this right here on the side so I can sort of see everything. The sector and industry group play a huge role in how I do my analysis. I like to know what the peers are. So I will constantly be looking at this. So having this right here, I really think is attractive. If I go to this next market summary, what I like to do is I actually hit there's a number of choices here. You got market indexes and all that, but I like to have the sector spiders up. And what I'll do is I want to see at the beginning of the day, this heat map was brilliant. I think was a really great idea where we've got large cap growth versus small cap value, and you can see this sort of what's working today, and very, very helpful. But what I'll do after the market open, I see kind of where the direction is I'm going to just show you what I'm looking at. So I've got pretty much everything here: large cap, small cap, NASDAQ 100. I've got the VIX, and then I've got all the sectors. So I can see pretty much everything in one look. And if I want to look at the bonds, the commodities, or crypto, I can do that as well. So this is a really easy way for me to see what's going on for the day, what sectors are working and which ones aren't. And so I'm constantly on this page during the course of the day. Also, I have this market movers that I look at, and I'll switch this over to the S&P, and then I like to see what the top gainers are. This right now, since this pre-market is for yesterday, so I can get a pretty good idea of whether value's working, whether it's growth, or is it a mix? And then if I go to the decliners, I can see what's really getting hurt that day. It's pretty nice to just have that at my fingertips. And what I love to be able, what most software packages don't allow you to do is give you the ability to plug in a specific segment of the market for this. So you're not getting these stocks up 50% or down 50% or something like that. You're getting kind of the realistic movers, that stocks that you'd probably have an interest in. So that's pretty nice. And then scooter rankings, I actually like to look at top gainers, as opposed to looking at the rank. I mean, looking at the ranked is fine, and looking at the top 10 and the bottom 10, but I actually like to look at the top gainers, because I'm looking for, when I look at relative strength, I'm looking for stocks that are showing improvement. And so if a stock has come down to support and it's got a really low scooter ranking, and then it starts to kick in to the upside and starts to jump off that, that's pretty attractive to me. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that and click through whatever symbols that you want that way. So the last thing I want to just touch on is the scanning. And so I've actually created a scan. If you go in and hit the edit scan mode button here, my recommendation is to make sure you have sort of a preliminary of, I've got the country, the US, I've got volume greater than 1 million, and the average market cap is greater than 1 billion. And so I always have that on every one of the scans that I use. And then above here is where I put sort of the pattern I'm trying to define. And this pattern is essentially what I call the opposing trend trigger setup, where the weekly chart is in an uptrend and the daily chart is pulling back or in a downtrend. And so this is the setup pattern. It is not the trigger. And so what I'll do is I'll run this and just show you. I'll run a scan, and then what I want to do once this comes up is go through the individual symbols and then analyze it based on the MACD and the ADX. So I'm using simple moving averages to create this, but what I'm looking for is an uptrend on the weekly, and you can see your 18 is rising above the 40, and price is making higher highs and higher lows, and we've pulled back to the 18 week. That's really the goal. And then I'm looking at the ADX, see if it's strong, and then I'm looking for a pattern, a reversal pattern back up through say 355, something like that, to be sort of like the trigger of the pattern. So 144 stocks are passing this. I could probably make it a little bit more strict. There's definitely different ways to do that. I just wanted to give you sort of a brief outline of how I would go about doing it. So anyway, these are a couple of different ways that I use the ACP program. I think it's very, very useful to be able to do a lot of different things, but certainly if you want to catch some information at your fingertips, I think you have that when you use the market summary pages. All right, let's go ahead and get into the stocks now. Okay, and let me just say again, if you have any symbol requests, just go ahead and plug them in the comment area on YouTube, or you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com. First stock we've got here is EPR. I've got my monthly bottom left, weekly bottom right, daily upper right, and then I've got another weekly with the relative strength line versus the S&P in the upper left-hand corner. So we've seen this stock make a pretty big move. Now this is a counter trend move because the 18 is below the 40 and the 18 month is still declining here. If you notice, MACD is just kind of working its way back down to the 0 line. So we're going to have some issues up in here. You can see where this had a pretty violent decline. Now we're getting up into some resistance. It's not a bad spot if you bought it down here to consider cutting it back a little bit. I'm not totally convinced that this is going back down. I actually think that's not likely to be the case, but it might spend some time consolidating here while this 18-month cups around. So I actually kind of like the weekly chart in that the momentum signs are pretty good. But we're coming into this more violent selling area, and I think people that got caught in this are probably going to use this as a chance to do some selling. So I'd be on the lookout for maybe a little bit of a pause or a pullback for now. If it doesn't give back too much, there could be more upside coming. IRM, Iron Mountain. So this one did make a pretty strong move to the upside on the monthly chart, and we got a little reversal last month, big, kind of reversal bar. And so we've gotten extended. It ought to take a little bit more time in consolidating after the ADX on the weekly got up over 70, and it's starting to turn down from there. And if you notice, the MACD was very far away from the 0 line and has now turned back down. So neither of these are the end of the world, but they tend to suggest that this should spend more time in consolidation for now and working off this overbought condition. It's another one where if you haven't taken profits, it's not a bad idea to maybe scale out a little bit, but I think there's probably more upside coming after a correction phase. STX is just going into the correction. It made a really big move, and look at this 100 area. I mean, I talk about this in almost every video where these big round numbers are very important. We reversed at the 100 area, and we've started to correct back down. There's still a pretty good distance before we hit the 18-month line, so I think this is going to take a little bit more time, and that is confirmed by the weekly chart breaking the 18-week here. Now that 18-week is still rising, but let's say in the next couple days, we get into next week, actually, that line will probably start to roll over. And based on the violence of the decline, the big red bar to the downside, I don't know, it just looks to me like it wants to spend more time in a correction for now. So, not a bad stock from a bigger picture standpoint, but near term, I don't think is something I'd be too focused on. Etsy is intriguing me. And so we've got a list of stocks that have this pattern with the strong move to the upside and now corrected. Now, some haven't made it all the way back to the 18-month line. You notice how there's still a little bit of an error between the 18-month and the price, but we have a 1, 2, 3 bar pullback on the monthly, so 3 months of consolidating, and it looks like it's found support, and especially want to look at the weekly chart. So when I look at the correction on the monthly and I realize it's pulling back, I'm looking for where the 18 and the 40 week are coming together, that usually tells me that this has gone through a pretty extensive correction phase and we're getting closer. It doesn't mean that the moment these get close like this that it's getting ready to take off again, but it's where I want to start watching them. And usually when the 18 and the 40 get together is where the MACD is coming back down to the 0 line. If I have low ADX in this situation after a strong ADX reading to the upside, then I want to start monitoring this pretty closely. And so, it's the type of thing that I'm not convinced that just coming right back up through this high would be, the best situation here, because I think it needs a little bit more work to get going, but attractive nonetheless. And I wouldn't have a problem doing some buying, crossing back up to 100, but I probably want to give it a little bit of room if I'm going to do that, because I have a feeling it's going to take a little bit more time to get going. Let's look at RBLX, and I'm just going to look at the daily chart. We don't have a lot of history here. The point I wanted to make, and I threw up the fib grid, is that on the retracement, this retracement held the 618, rallied up and failed at the 23%, and then it came down and made a lower low and got almost down to 78, but it overran the 61. When I see that, I tend to shy away from being a buyer right away. I think we're probably going to spend more time consolidating. There's a little bit more damage done to this trend based on the overrun of the 618, especially when you overrun the 618. I mean, I like to see it hold the 50%, but if it overruns the 61, then I usually am thinking that it's going to need more time. So I just want to make sure I point that out. When you don't have the longer term moving averages to use the fib grid. ADSK, another very attractive pattern in my view. Look at the strong move on the monthly. And again, the negative to me, it's a negative and a positive in that it's so strong that it wouldn't pull back to the 18-month line. I'd prefer to see it come back to the 18-month. These pullbacks into that zone between the 18 and the 40 longer term are usually pretty attractive when both of these lines are rising. In this situation, it just wouldn't do it, but we've got nice tails formed on the monthly candles. And look at the pattern on the weekly. So the moving averages have come together, and now we made a lower high and a lower low, and now we've kind of we're wedging our way in, and it looks like we're starting to emerge out of here after the MACD got pretty close to the 0 line with low ADX. So you can see on the daily chart, it's trying to emerge back up through this 300 area. I mean, we're getting, this is a overall pretty attractive pattern, something that I'd be pretty interested in. HCDI. Again, there's not enough history here, so I want to just focus on the daily chart. We had a declining phase, and now we're in a basing phase. The question is this base going to hold this prior support area? I don't see a whole lot going on in this right now. In the last decline, we got a little bit of negative DI to show up. So at that point now, I want to see this at least get back above 3, and I'd like to see it do it with some expanding volume and maybe price action to show an undercut and rally pattern. But right now, until that happens, I'd probably shy away from this. If I'm in this, I'm probably going to give this a chance because it does look like there's support nearby. Let's look at Amazon, because Amazon has attempted to break out, and I'll focus on the weekly. Attempted to break out, and then if you notice, last week we had kind of a nasty little reversal after a really good bar. Now, the good news here is that we're holding the breakout area. And so, I think overall this still looks like it's in fine shape. The ADX is starting to turn back up. MACD is turning back up on the weekly. The only thing I would tell you is that if I was going to play this as a trade, I would probably say I really don't want to see this coming down, especially on a closing basis back through 3,500. If there's any kind of volume especially or anything like that, if we close back down through 3,500, I would view that as a pretty big negative, and that maybe it wants to come back down into the zone and trade sideways longer. So that would be my only caveat to this pattern right now. Let's look at CFLT. Not a lot of history here. So we've made a lower high and a lower low. I wanted to point out to you that if you're sending in symbols, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is that I don't have enough history here to give you a good analysis. I can see, you know, where the lows and the highs are, but anyone can do that. So for the most part, if someone sends in a symbol that doesn't have enough history, I probably won't include it. So just wanted to make mention of that. ESTC, another one that I think is interesting. Notice how on the monthly chart, we pulled back to the 18-month. We have good ADX in place, strong ADX, strong 18-month bounce. And then what we've done is now we're cupping around, the 18-week is cupping around. So we've rallied up into kind of this little resistance area from the drop. And now it's sort of coming back down to test the 18-week line. So I think this is intriguing me. What bothers me the most about this is the violence of this decline here. That was pretty nasty. And so I'm sort of thinking that instead of this coming right back up to break out again, my guess would be that you're going to spend more time kind of consolidating sideways in the near term, maybe between 150 and 130 or something like that. But I think it is a name to watch because we have the monthly chart in place, and this is trying to get back in gear. Based on that violence of the sell-off, it might take a little bit more time. CIBR, strong trend. It wouldn't even let the weekly moving averages come together during the correction, and it already went back to a new high. So kind of missed a buying opportunity there. One thing we need to watch now is we want to see this ADX confirm by getting back above 25, and it hasn't happened yet. I wouldn't just sell this because ADX isn't confirming, but we want to watch as this continues to progress higher, if it does. And if ADX cannot get back above 25, then you would use a trend line break. So I'd probably do something along these lines. I'd be watching this with the trend line underneath. And if ADX doesn't get above 25 and we end up coming back down through and breaking that trend line, that would be a sell signal for me. So let's go on to the next stock, FROG. One of the main things I want to point out here is we've got a break of the downtrend line that's taking place on the weekly chart. So we break the trend line right at the round number. We kind of turn back down and we pull back and we're testing this area. So break of the downtrend and now a test. Now, if we come back through 50 to the upside, I would view that as preliminary evidence or suggestive evidence that the trend is turning back to the upside. Remember, if you're going to have a trend formed, you need a pattern of higher highs and higher lows, which means you need kind of 2 higher highs and 2 higher lows. But if you break the trend line and then you come back and test the low and then go to a new high, that is a pretty good sign that we've got some evidence that the trend is starting to shift. So something you really want to be watching here, I find kind of attractive from that standpoint. HACK has the same pattern where we didn't come back to the 18-month, but we have consolidated for a while. The weekly chart is another one where we came down. We didn't spend a whole lot of time correcting, but now we're back up against the old high, and I think this looks pretty good. The ADX on the upside was really attractive, and then on the pullback, this consolidation pattern didn't have a lot of selling. The red DI never got really above 25 here. And so now we're seeing green DI kind of come back into this. So overall, pretty attractive and something I'd be watching pretty close. SNOW, another one that doesn't have a lot of history. However, I want to show you the weekly chart because notice what's going on here. We had the big kind of spike top, and then we made, lower highs, lower high, lower highs, lower low, lower high, lower low, and now we're reversing that pattern. And notice how the 18 is doing a pretty good job of defining that. And we've come back down and sort of tested this line, which is now rising. So it is early on a weekly chart. It's showing signs that the trend is starting to reverse to the upside. I like the daily pattern in that we went through this declining phase. We have this sort of a basing stage, and now we're trying to break out and get going again. A little bit more confirmation out of green DI and seeing the blue ADX line turn back up again, I think would be good confirmation, but it's a pretty attractive pattern here. Let's look at CDAY because this is the same pattern that's happening over and over again. Look at the pullback to the 18-month line, and we're holding. And now if we go to the weekly, we had this downtrend line break. So we break the downtrend line, and now we're coming back to test the moving average. I brought this up a couple times, and notice how the MACD is cupping around at the 0 line, and we have low ADX. So, you know, I'm always on the lookout for this if we can find it, because you've got the monthly chart in an uptrend, and now what we're trying to do is get back up above 100, the big round number, and kick in the weekly trend to get back in line with the monthly trend. That's the kind of combination where you can lower your risk. So if this comes back up through 100, we've got a pretty good reversal point here on the daily. Maybe give it a little room under that. But if we come back up through 100, I think this would be a pretty good sign where we're getting good timing and we're lowering our risk this way, looking at all 3 time frames. Let's look at AGEN. Monthly chart shows a pretty long sideways pattern. And when I see this, I want to see, I do like the volume pattern, I like the ADX, but I do want to see a little bit more convincing evidence that it's really getting going and it's really breaking out. And my reasoning is, I know we've stored a lot of energy here. If we get going to the upside, there should be a significant amount of upside. So I don't want to pre-guess the breakout and jump the gun or anything like that. I want to make sure that I've got convincing evidence that things are getting to going. So if I go to the weekly chart, I can see I have a couple spikes here, a top here, a big reversal up here, but that is less of a concern than these last 3 peaks. So I think if we can get back up through, you know, 575, 580, something like that, especially if we make a little higher bottom here like that and then turn back up. Because if you notice, you see this reversal and the retracement and the reversal and the retracement. What we're looking for is a shallow pullback after hitting this. See, this did the same thing. The pullback was not shallow, it was deep. It ran into resistance and sellers came in and sent it back down. What we're looking for now is a shallow pullback. And if this doesn't pull one of these big drops and instead just kind of consolidate sideways, probably holding 5, then I think that sets the stage for a real breakout and turnaround. APLS is our next symbol. So a pretty good trend here. It's actually pretty strong, and the ADX is in good condition. The one negative is you really don't have entry right now. I mean, I think there's decent support at 60. If I'm in this, I want to hold it because I like the momentum conditions. I like the pattern of higher highs and higher lows. You're above the monthly, you're above the weekly. Pretty much, you're not extended or anything like that. But I want a better entry. I'd like to see this daily chart sort of form some kind of a sideways consolidation pattern that would give me a better entry setup if I want to do this. But for now, it would be more of a hold than a buy. LEGN has just kind of taken off. Whoever sent in this symbol had a good idea in mind, but by the time we got this out and I was able to put this together, this thing is kind of breaking out and taking off. So hopefully whoever asked about this bought this. Look at the ADX pattern. Look at this nice kind of a cup and handle. But really strong ADX condition. And then we got the little dip that I just referred to where you get up against the high and then instead of giving a deep retracement, you have a shallow one and then break out. That's a good sign to be on the lookout for. And so we've got that. Now this is kind of taken off. I don't think this is as attractive at this price level, but I do think, the pattern looks pretty good to me. We are out of time. Thanks for joining. My contact information is here. You can email me at joe@rabelstockresearch.com or contact me on LinkedIn. Also, send your stock request to stocktalk@stockcharts.com, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.